How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first
Good morning to everyone. Thank you for being here. We are starting a new study this morning, so you've got quite a bit of information there. Try to give just a little sampling of some of the things that we'll be getting into as we begin the Life of Christ study 2022, so we're starting a little early. But I want to use the next 2 weeks to do an introduction about some things. We still have a few things that we'll need to decide as far as schedule to give us some options. Anyway, this will be something that will give you a chance to see how this will work. I look back, the life of Christ, that seemed familiar to me. So in March 2019, if you remember, we started a survey of the New Testament, and the volume 1 was Life of Christ. So if you were in that study and you still have your book, that will give you some resource as well in the study you can go back and refer to. This is going to be, what we're doing this coming year is going to be a little bit more in depth. The things that we'll study about the life of Christ, we'll be going through, of course, the 4 gospel accounts and some other things involved in the New Testament. I never had really calculated it, but one of the little pieces of information that we get from Truth for Today for this study, that 47% of the New Testament deals with the gospel accounts in the life of Christ. So that's a lot of information from the New Testament that we can look into, think about as well. So we'll have a prayer, and then we will look at our handout sheets and give you some background information about what we'll be doing. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this first day of the week as we come together and we meet in this place as our brothers and sisters in Christ all over the world are doing. We know that we're under uncertain times still, and we pray that all of us will continue to be safe. Pray that we will continue to know that you're in control and that you're guiding things, and we're mindful of that and your love for us. Pray for our family members who are away from us that we may be able to see, maybe not for this holiday season. Pray for those who will be traveling. They'll be safe as well. As we begin this class this morning, Father, we have much ahead of us for the coming year as we plan on putting effort into teaching and preaching and sharing the life of Christ, about your Son Jesus and things that he did and the will that he had to do your will. And we pray that we will learn from that. But ask you to enlighten us with your word and be always, help us to be always mindful of how important and how powerful it is in our life and be in the lives of others. We know, Father, that we have many who are not here with us in various ways, but as we make an effort to reconnect, we pray that you give us strength and courage to do that. Share those our number, especially this time, need the guidance and encouragement, things that will rekindle their faith. Pray for our young people, and we pray that as we strive to begin classes again, that we will find ways of encouraging our young people in your truth as well, no matter what age they are. Continue now with us as we go through our worship service and as we bring before you those on our prayer list who are struggling, just for their healing and their comfort as well. All in Jesus' name. So as we said, today and next Sunday, we're going to be looking at some things regarding the Life of Christ study. The scope of the program, you haven't got to see much, but that's the reason that we want to try to do this, is there's a lot to it. There's different schedules that they have suggested as far as when we will do this. Sunday AM adult class will be involved. There's materials for the teen class. There's materials for the 5th and 6th graders. It's just that we've got to find those. We've got to find those teens. We've got to find those 5th and 6th graders as well as others in our classes, so that we can do that. This will involve Sunday evening. This will involve Wednesday evening. One of the things that we're going to be looking at just a little bit is a 13-week video series. I've looked at a couple of the videos. They're really good. They're really encouraging and inspiring. I think that's what we need right now. So that we can try to do that maybe on a Sunday evening. Don't know that a Wednesday evening will work. We're wanting to try to find time where we can get the most of our members to participate in seeing that, so that what they see, then they can encourage others that can't be here. And so we have that before us and trying to figure that out. But possibly maybe next Sunday we'll give a little sampling of one of those so that you can see that. That'll be something that we've done at the first of the year. So as we go through these things, I think the biggest thing that we look at is we're doing this in order to try to equip us and try to enable us as a congregation, but also individually. And in that challenge that we have before us, the substance of the study is very important as far as any time that we can study, the life of Christ and in depth in that way, all the different ways that we're going to do that. We need teachers. We've spoken of that for years. We're getting to a point in our congregation where we've had so many individuals through the years who have been faithful, strong teachers, no matter for what age group, whether it be for the cradle row, through all of these classrooms that have been empty for a long time now, through up the junior high and senior high. And so we don't fit in those categories anymore, do we? I mean, sitting right here, we don't go to those classes. We need those young people to go there. And I think we have a lot of possibilities of those families that have visited and different ones that have come. We got to find a way to encourage them. I understand that we were hoping by this time this year that we were not having to worry so much about the coronavirus, but as we see, it's starting up again. Of course, now it's a little different because many are able to be vaccinated. We're still, doing those things that we need to do to protect one another. And so we still have that hurdle, but I think we can try to do as much as we can, try to encourage one another as much as we can, and try to also, try to get connected again with many of those that are not able to be here. We will still do I'm sure we'll still do for a while the streaming, but we don't want that to be something that everyone depends on and becomes so comfortable with that they don't want to meet personally. I think that's a very important part of the Lord's church. We see that in the first century. They met in circumstances that were much greater than what we face, because they were meeting, even though that there were those seeking to take them and put them in prison and whatever in the great persecution that they faced. So yes, they had hardships. We have hardships today, but still they managed, and so we have to find a way to manage as well. Do that. We hope and we pray that through all of this, the part of the program is not just someone standing up in front of a congregation or a class and going through a class, but part of it as well is training. It's trying to train individuals to become teachers, whether it be in a class situation here, whether it be in a home situation where you have some friends over and you're holding a Bible study in your home somewhere or the other. And so we're praying that as we go through this, that we're going to build up our teacher base at home level and also in congregational level as well. And so that's part of the thing that we're going to be looking at. So let's look at the resources that's going to be available to us. We've shown you a few things. The 2-book set that we've ordered, the initial 25 sets of those. Margie's going to be bringing them to us this next week, and those that have ordered those will be handing those out. I'll admit to you and confess to you that I've misunderstood some things about those sets. I had taken it on to understand that the 2-volume set was $16. Well, it turns out that they're $16 each book. But what we're going to do for those first 25 that went to order those are still $16. The congregation is going to take on the other half of that cost as part of our mission and education expense. And so we're going to keep that as it is. But as we go forward, if more people want some books, it may have to be a rate for the 2 books instead of the 16. But I think that's a good start. We had 25, like I said, sets that are coming our way for those people that ordered those. And a few of you even ordered a few for those that can't afford to have those. And so we have that resource that's going to be more of a personal Bible study. The teachers, whoever does the adult classes or devotionals and different things, will use those as resources. We have the website. I need to find out a little more detail about the website. I think, and this may be another misunderstanding on my part, but I think that was intended to be any member of the congregation can access that website. And then again, I may learn that, well, no, that was mainly meant for, accessing all the materials that's there. So I'll try to get that answer this week about that. There's lots of stuff there. There's going to be a sermon outlines. There's going to be PowerPoint. There's information, all kinds of things that we can print out for you. And you've got just a few samples of that in your handout packet this morning. But we'll make as much of that available to everybody as possible. The Reaching Out Clinic, in your handout, let's look at that for just a moment. This is meant to, like I said, those who are interested in reaching out to others. This is a tool to encourage us. If we have friends that we're wanting to speak to, if we have those who have been coming and visiting the congregation, and we need to follow up. It's meant as an evangelistic effort. This is part of the program, not only teaching ourselves within, but also reaching outside the congregation. And so in these 13 videos, some of the men that will be presenting these videos, some you've heard of before, some you haven't. But to look at the topics, why should you teach others? I looked at that. That's a good one. It's very encouraging. It sort of brings us back sometimes to some things that we have heard in years past, but don't hear as much anymore. Preparing yourself for reaching out, devoting yourself to prayer. Eddie Clore, who was speaking here not too long ago, that brought us the information. Getting your method. There's different methods to doing this. We understand. What are some of the ways that we used to take the gospel or reach out? Let's have some discussion just a minute, just to keep you awake and engaged. What are some ways that we used to do that? Some ideas. Videos, the Jewel Miller film strips. I'd be interested in letting the kids look at some of these little film strips that we used to stick on the little projector, and it would go, one slide at a time. And then we upgraded, and then we got the actual VHS tapes, that we were able to use. Pam and I, years ago, and some of the others of the congregation, we would go campaigns to Iowa, and we did that. You do door knocking, which was a scary thing. And so door knocking, the Jules Miller film strips, We've done some other types of personal Bible studies where we do that, and we don't do that as much anymore because people are just not quite into those things. You can't just go up to someone's house and knock on their door and show them a Bible and say, hey, we'd like to study with you for a few minutes. Many people are just going to shut their door. They're not going to be doing that. And so there's certain things that we have to change our method sometimes. Still present the same truth, but present our method. The other thing is finding and befriending students. People that we know, people that maybe we don't know, starting conversations. The next one is something that we actually talked about in our class last week concerning the seed principle, thinking about who we are and what do we do. What is our mission? What is it that we're to be about the Lord's business? Exactly what does that look like? Crafting a strategy, building relationships is very important in this. Leading people to Jesus, improving your abilities, living to teach. We're all teachers. We teach not only in word, but we teach by what people see from us, how we live our life, how we handle situations. That was a big thing, I think, with Jesus that I see. You look at Jesus and the things that he did, it's how he related to people, how he connected to people, how he looked at opportunities and looked at things differently than everyone else, and was able to teach in that way. Caring for the convert, these are some things that we have struggled with in the past, where we have someone that obeys the gospel, and then what? We don't always follow up as we should. And then, of course, perseverance is one of those things that we've talked about in the last month or so as well, and persevering through all of this. So this is something that we will do. We'll use these videos, maybe just example on a Sunday evening, is we get as many people here as we can. We have a situation here where I've also got to find out, what are the copyright abilities here? Can we, so many congregations are streaming now, but you can't just put something on and then stream it out to the world because of copyright. So we've got to look at that. It's maybe something, maybe they've made an adjustment for that, but most times, you can just only use it here. You can't broadcast it out to the rest of the world. So we'll look through that. We've already mentioned the books. I'd like to talk just a little bit. You have a handout also about the young people classes that's involved. There's a sheet that says Christ and the Teenager. That's a 52-week study for teenagers. Again, finding that right time to have that class so that we reach the most young people. There's a video series that goes with that as well to sort of, add a little bit to the class that teens are. That's just how they do now. I mean, they're sort of stimulated by things that they see, not reading something. Changing the way that they teach in the public schools because of that. So they're able to do that. There's a ebook which they can download onto their device that talks about, the title is The Teenage Missionary. It's written by 10 different youth ministers across the country. It gives them extra encouragement as far as how do they reach out to their friends that they know. I've been impressed. We've been impressed with Peyton bringing friends with him, on Wednesday nights. And so that's what we need. We need those young people, especially, that want to invite their friends and bring them in. We don't do the Joy Bus anymore. We used to have 2 of those things. I remember when first started getting me involved that I would ride one of those Joy Buses up here. We don't do those anymore. Then we had the van, and we did that for a while. It served a purpose, but then that we don't do it anymore either. So there's just certain things that we've done very well in the past through the years, but because of changes in culture and just lifestyles and various things, COVID, can't do those things. So how are we going to do it now? What's the change? What's the replacement for those types of things? I think with just my experience during the time that we weren't having services and classes, that we were just trying from home to have a Bible class through our own Facebook. I don't do social media, but we did use Facebook in that way, and we were able through our study to actually contact some people that participated in that study that probably would not come here, but we were still able to do that. And I think that may be one of the tools that we may have to get back with in order just to reach some of those people that's outside of our fellowship with the gospel and with some of the materials that we want to use. So we're going to be thinking about that as well as maybe still doing that on a Sunday evening through a home study over here. And so the preteens, that would be the 5th and 6th graders. There's also a 52-week study for them that follows along. And so we want to, again, try to get our 5th and 6th graders and our teens get involved in that, find a good time that we can get the most that will be available to them. The other thing, and you have a, let's look at some of the other resources. You have one that says Understanding the Four Gospels, Bible class discussion questions. There's 129 Bible lessons in this program. 120. And so each one of those have different aspects. You've got discussion questions that, let's say that we were handing this out this week, that you look at through the week, come back next Sunday morning. Now we're going to have a class and discussion. So at that point, there'll be handout. I've been trying to do handouts like this, where there's handouts that's already available that we'll go through to give a little bit more depth, a little bit more meat, a little bit more discussion that we'll go through, so that we will have a pretty good understanding and comprehension of these four Gospels. And this is similar to what we did, when we had our study here in 2019, chronological study. But this brings us a little bit more information. I thought it was interesting. I've said it before, but you think about four Gospel accounts and why they were written. How because a lot of people are asking, well, if God's Word is so true, why are there discrepancies in, for instance, the four Gospels? It seems like that each one of the writers on one particular thing, they're talking about it in a different way. So it helps us understand how all that fits. And it does. It all gives us a complete story under four insights, four different reasons for writing, four different people that they're writing to. And it makes sense. And so that's a good understanding. When that question comes up, why differences there, help us answer those questions. So that's one of the things that's just a typical adult Bible class. It's also in another way. One of the other pieces you have is one that says Salvation Insight. So this is designed through the year. There will be 8 times during the year that there will be a Salvation Insight spread out through the year. That involves class, that involves sermon out. These are meant that if you have individuals that you've been speaking with, maybe talking to, maybe even studying with some, that on that particular Sunday that salvation insight comes up, that will be an opportunity for you to invite those friends or those study partners to come and listen to a class here that we'll have on salvation insight. This one is not the first one. This is number 2. That asks the question, are you on the narrow road? And this will also be in the sermon that morning. And so what it's going to do, it is going to focus in on questions that we would look at and say, well, that is a gospel lesson. That is a gospel sermon. If we were going out and doing door knocking or on a campaign or something like that, we're having a study with someone, these are some of those questions that we ask that individual to think of. According to Matthew 7, 13 and 14, how many gates or roads are there? 2. What are the characteristics of the wide gate? What are the characteristics of the narrow gate? What place does a narrow gate lead? What did Jesus mean by life? So we think about those things. It's just like, you ask those questions and they look at it, they think about it, they read it for themselves, they compare, they process. Where am I in that answer? Are there some who will prevent others from traveling the way that leads to life? Satan has many that will try to keep people from following the road that leads to life. Who are the false prophets? That's talked about in Matthew 7. How can we know that we are on the way? How does Jesus tell us to get on the way that leads to life? In your own words, retell the illustration that Jesus uses in Matthew 7. So as we speak to that person, them to understand, as I read that, well, how would I describe that? How do I understand that in my life? Then it starts sort of making some connections spiritually. What was the difference between the 2 builders? What does Matthew 7, 21, 23 tell us about judgment? Are you acting on the words of Christ? Here's the key question in any Bible study that we have. When we come to that point, ask that question, and you pause. It's always the typical way that we did that. You pause, and think, process. Yes, I think I'm in need. I need to do that. You put all those things together. And that's the way the gospel is. It's very simple. It's not something that's involved with cupola and all that. It's just there. It's the word. And so we have those. It's going to be there. And so you're starting to get the idea of what this is all about. This is not just a Bible study. It's not a can that we can open up and we start pouring out Bible lessons and we do this particular way in a Bible class. But it really involves a understanding. It involves a emphasis. It involves an encouragement, a spurring on type of thing in all the aspects of what we are about as far as the Lord's church. Final piece of resource that we have is a little book. Not many pages to it. I thought we might have a sample of it, but I don't. But this is a book that's written by the same author of the 2-book volume. The 2-volume set is Oh, How I Love You. And it's going to talk about certain things related to this idea of why did Jesus die on the cross? Because he loved us. Why did God send Jesus to die on the cross? Because he loved us. Why did Jesus want us to go out into the world and teach the gospel? Because he loved us. Why do we want to do that? Because we have concern and love for those people that we talk to. So this will be a tool that if you have to talk to someone, you hand them the book. This is something that they have on their own that they can consider as well. Page 2. I think we've gone through all of our little handouts. we looked at. So when we start the study, we'll begin some of this. That discussion question sheet that you have, think about those this week. We'll start some of those. I know as we go through this is going to be sort of, looks redundant to us. It's going to look like something that we studied recently, and yes, we have, but we're going to try to do it in a way that's a little different from we're not going to try to pull out a Bible lesson that we used, a year ago or 2 years ago. Try to work it a little bit so it's fresh and it's new, looking at it in a different way. The first section of the study gives us foundation. It talks about the sources of inspired writing. That's the Gospels. We're going to go into a little bit of detail as far as how they're written, and sort of a review of something that we've already done, but just to sort of refresh our minds about the Gospels and the purpose that they were written, who were they written to. And then it also gives us foundation about the world that Jesus entered and where he lived. And Jim's been doing a lot of that information lately, a lot of historical data and information. And so some of this that we'll be getting into, we're not going to go back over all of that, but we'll just sort of review it, pick out pieces that are important for us at that particular point in our study, for the adult class here. So the study topics in this first part, setting the scene, thinking about, there's been lots of movies, videos, and various things that I've heard about, some that I've watched, that talks about, this land that Jesus was born into. We see aspects of it. I remember in school, we were still able to put bulletin boards up, that were associated with holiday season, Christmas, and I remember helping on one time, and they had this bulletin board, and you had this hill, and you had these three wise men sitting on top of camels, and you had that star in the midnight sky, in the dark sky, that was shining down over that little place of Bethlehem, and everything was sort of calm and quiet, and just very peaceful, and that's sort of what we think about, but that just wasn't the case. I mean, if you look at Bethlehem at that time when Jesus was born, it was madness. It was like Fort Smith on the day before Christmas. People everywhere, things that had to be done, and Jesus was born into that. And it's good for us to completely understand, as far as we can tell from what we can learn and what we can find out, that world that Jesus entered into. Why were certain people so against what Jesus was trying to do? We look at it and think, well, it was all truth. Why were they arguing with him and fighting him and doing all those things? It helps us to understand it's not easy. But God had tried to lead the nation of Israel towards that, right? Everything that we look at, trying to lead the nation of Israel toward the coming of the Messiah. I'm sure he hoped that he knew better, that there would be those that would just totally reject him, so they did. And so, the world of Jesus today, the political landscape, we're not going to be talking about much about that. Jim's been covering that a lot over the past several weeks. The land of Palestine, where Jesus lived, Holy Land, it's called. People still want to go and try to see, what it was like. It was much different then. And then later in January, when we start really getting into the study of Jesus' life prior to his ministry. We know some things about, what he did. We know that his dad was a carpenter. That we know that they went to, he was lost there for a while, and they found him in the temple. And we know those little pieces of things. But we'll look and see what else that we can find out about that. It involves an introduction about Jesus that's given in the gospel accounts, the announcements that were made about the birth of Jesus and the birth of John the Baptist. And then we have the actual births that took place and everything that was involved with that, the events that followed Christ's birth. And then you have those silent years where Jesus was there on this earth, but we don't have a lot of information about that. So we have those things. And then we get into so many other things as far as his ministry and everything that took place, and those lessons that we learn about how he taught, how he reacted, how he saw the world. I mentioned earlier. And then finally, in all of this, I picked out three passages, and I know that you probably think of others maybe this coming week. But when we think about the teaching initiative that's involved with this series and this class, let's close with these three passages. Colossians 3:16. Let the word of Christ richly dwell within you, all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God. And then we find Hebrews 5:12. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you have need again for someone to teach you the elementary principles of the oracles of God. You have come to need milk and not solid food. We studied about this not too long ago. We had those in the Lord's church, Christians, disciples of Jesus, who were turning back from that. They were returning back to the things of the old law. And he told them that, it was time that they should be this point in being teachers, but now they were going to have to learn some things all over again. And then finally, the third passage, 2 Timothy 2:2. And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. It's a perpetual thing. You teach someone who can in turn teach someone else, who can in turn teach someone else, and so forth, and so on. That's how the gospel is meant to be spread. Thank you for your attention this morning. Look over the information. I know we went over it quickly. Look at the Bible class discussion questions, understanding the four Gospels. We're going to be looking at that just a little bit next week as well.